Hi there. Sword of the Stars is a game that I love a lot, but it's also a game that doesn't do the best job of teaching you how to play it and giving you the tools needed to understand what's going on. So I decided I'd make this video just as a bit of a tutorial and overview on how things work and hopefully be able to help people get into this game, even though it is certainly getting on in years. So, let's start out. Uh, Start a single player game. Scenarios are pre-done, or not pre-done, pre-made, scenarios with set win conditions, set factions. Not quite a campaign though. So we're going to go for a custom game. And just for the sake of ease, I'm going to set it to 2D. Going to set the number of planets to 50. Leave these at their default positions. Just 2 players because it's just a little sort of tutorial thing. Here you can see the size of the galaxy, not the size, but the shape. You can see you could do stuff like a sphere, hollow insides, spiral. As you can see, change the number, all sorts of stuff. We're going to change this back to 50. Distance, the average distance between 2 star systems in the game. It's an average. It can vary depending on the individual planets. Size is a modifier to the average planet's size. Resources is a modifier to the average resources of a planet. Down here, we have strategic turn length. This is if you want to put a timer for how long each strategic phase is. Combat turn length is the same, but for combat. Random encounters. There's going to be random encounters when you explore systems, and this will affect it. AI, it doesn't tell you, but easy, normal, difficult, these will determine bonuses and penalties that any AI players get. Initial treasury, initial colonies, and initial technologies are fairly self-explanatory. Treasury is how much money you start with. Colonies are how many planets you start with. Usually you just start with 1, which is your home world, but you could start with more than 1 if you wanted. And technologies, again, is how many technologies you want to start with. Economic and research efficiency is basically bonus percentage or penalty to all economic and research income. Although you will see as we get into this how one of these can actually directly influence the other. You can set what races, or I should say species, you want to allow, which factions, there we go, which factions you want to allow to be selected, and of course, the maximum number of players. Once that's all set up to your liking, you go to create game, and let's just say tutorial. So here we actually have the place where you would see the players. So you can see you got the name. You can change that if you want to change player name. And here's the various factions. Now, what the game does by default is it starts out as humans, and if you play the tutorial. Unlike most science fiction or fantasy games where humans are the middle ground, the average against which all other things are measured, in Sword of the Stars, that's not the case at all. And humans actually have a big gimmick to how they move around the galaxy itself, and that is not exactly helpful to somebody just trying to get into the game for the first time. Now, what you want to do, probably, and what we're going to do, is play as the Tarka, because they have no gimmick to their movement. They are the closest thing that most people will be familiar with to a vanilla science fiction, 4X sort of game. So you can select your badge. This is sort of your personal symbol of your side, and then you can choose your avatar, whatever. So if you want to change individual players' treasury, colonies, and technology so that it's not uniform, you can do it here. You can also change the AI settings individually here. These compound with any that you have set up in the lobby previously. So if you set up easy in the lobby beforehand and you select easy here, the enemy will have even more severe penalties, or easy there and then difficult here, or stuff like that. It has varying effects. It's not very well documented exactly what the bonuses and penalties that the AI gets are. I'm pretty sure they're out there somewhere if you want to trawl the official forums. But I'm not going to get into that right now. And then at the bottom here, you get sort of the lore on the different factions. And there's actually quite a bit of it. I think it's pretty well done. The game's perhaps a little tongue-in-cheek with things, but overall I think it's pretty nice. Anyway, so for our computer opponent, just for the heck of it, let's say human. We'll leave this to be randomly selected, and then we're going to launch the game. You're going to get a random little bit of artwork, and that loaded fast. Huh. Good old solid state drives, I suppose. So here's how you start. So let's go over the interface, right? Down here, you got the chat. Single player game, you're not going to be using this, right? Here, you have objectives. This will be important if you're playing a scenario, which we are not. Here, you have sort of various toggles for the map itself. We can use an axis, or display one. I've never found this particularly helpful, even in the three-dimensional maps, but I guess it might be for some people. The political map, which will show the color of your empire and any others depending on the planets that you control. Right now we only control one, and you can also highlight or flash certain ones if you want. Sensor network shows the sensor range of all the stuff in your empire. Fleet lanes, or lines, which will display or turn off the little movement lines that show if your fleets are moving. It's on by default because you want to be able to see if stuff is moving. And star brightness. I don't think it hurts to keep it on. Over here, you got this little button. AI policy is if you leave a multiplayer game and the game continues without you, then the AI will take over. You can set it to either maintain, which will just research new stuff, but leave your empire otherwise alone. It won't do anything. Defend, expand. Only really important if you're doing multiplayer. Time limits. You can change this mid-game. Options. It's your standard stuff. You can save, and of course you can quit. Here's where you would end turn. Up here, we can see the different factions. You can see we are green, they are purple. I forgot that we could set our colors, so they got randomized. Status, round, time remaining. Rounds will be for how many rounds of combat that person or player or faction or whatever you want to call it has to do this round. For instance, if they got into like 3 fights, they'll have to resolve those. Time remaining shows the time remaining for the current fight, and status shows whether or not the person is still playing their round or if they have ended and are waiting on you. Here we have the diplomacy screen. Right now it's pretty lonely, just us, because we haven't met anybody else. And this is a bit of intel, but that's perhaps getting ahead of ourselves. This also sort of functions as a back button. This takes us straight here. this gives us our rankings. It's a little counterintuitive because if two players are matched for something, it won't say like tied for second or something. Instead, both players will be given the lowest title. So if you're in a 3-person game and 2 people are tied for second place, they'll both be listed as being in third, unless my memory has completely failed me, but I don't think it has. You can see how many ships you've built of each class, destroyer, cruiser, dreadnought, how many are still in service, how many lost, and how many enemy ships you have destroyed of those classes. And lastly up here, Empire Population Manager. You are probably never going to come here. Probably never. But if it becomes relevant, we will go over that. So we have here our home world. Oh, silly me. I haven't taught us anything basic. So right-click on a planet or a fleet, changes where the view is centered. Right-click, hold right-click, and move the mouse, moves the camera. Left-click displays planet information or fleet information if you click on a fleet. Double-click zooms you in to a thing. Double-click while it's already focused. We'll take you right up close. Double-click again, back out. So, first off, when you start a game, you have nothing set to research. So you go here, you can zoom out, press the I button to make sure that these names stay. This is the chat still. Special projects. These will come up later, but it's generally a good idea to keep it open, just in case something comes up that you miss. You can research these. So here's all the different things. You zoom in with a double click or by using the mouse wheel to scroll. Shows you the various things they do. If a technology has something like this, like a little silhouette of a ship with a part of it put in yellow, that means that researching this technology will unlock a ship section that you can use when building your ships. So first of all, let's just say, what do we want to research? Waldo units. Increases our empire's industrial output, reduces ship construction costs, and gives us the hammerhead section for the front of our ships. 10 turns to complete. Well, 10 turns with our current money going towards research. So let's just go with that for now. Research. It asks us if we want to. We can, of course, I shouldn't be talking over our advisor. We can cancel this research at any time, go research something else. We could research genetic modification, but we're not going to. So, we've got something set to research, right? This used to be all green. Now it's only mostly green. This is the pie chart of economics. You need to understand the pie chart of economics because the pie chart of economics is really important. But it's also simple, so don't worry. So we look here, and it's your income, right? You have planetary income, interest, which is based on your current savings. And then you have the various expenses. Planetary development, which is the cost of developing colonies. Fleet maintenance, which is upkeep on your ships. We have no ships, we have no colonies, so these are 0. Research is how much money you're spending on research. Aid is if you're giving another player money each turn or something. Probably not going to do except in a multiplayer game, but you might. Special projects are those special research projects I mentioned, and additional costs are, anything else. Projected treasury is what the game thinks your treasury will be next turn, unless something comes up to change it. And it is based on the projected change which is, or rather, it is based on your income. The projected change is how much extra you'll be getting. Projected change is effectively total income and interest minus your expenses. So in effect, projected change is your per turn income to be added to your treasury. But this isn't set in stone because we have this slider here. This is a very important slider. This slider is how much money out of your income per turn is going towards your pocket or technology. So right now this is going to take 10 turns. Let's say we just want a lot of money, right? Just a little sliver towards research. Barely any money going to research. But because we're not spending money on research, we're going to just, that money's just going to go into our account. But oh my goodness, it's going to take a lot longer to research this. Instead of 10 turns, 117. Well, what if we dedicate our entire research budget to this? Well, you can see that our projected treasury next turn is going to be the same as it is now. No projected change because we're not putting any money into our savings. It's all going straight into research. But it'll be researched in 3 turns. So that's a big thing, right? How much money you spend on research versus how much you spend on having to buy things. Things like ships, because you're going to want ships. And the easier way to do this is to go into the research tab, and as you select this, you can see the time to research right here changes. So let's say we want to put it at 5 turns. There's some wiggle room though. So we want to put it as close to the edge of where it'll be 5 turns as possible. Or sorry, before it becomes 6 turns. And that'll give us the most money towards our savings. So now we'll be getting about 130,000 space bucks next turn, spending about 120,000 space bucks on research. The rest of this, as you can see, we have our homeworld, Calvano. This can change depending on which faction you are, whether there's multiple people of your species in the game or not, etc. Here it'll show we have 1 colony. If we had more, it would list them all. We could see their income. Fleets shows our fleets. We have none. Explored systems, enemy colonies. Again, doesn't really do anything for us right now. So we see that. So what determines how much income we have? Our planets. For now, at least, all income is based on our planets. This is our home world. It's pretty heavily industrialized and populated. As you can see, it has an income of almost 250,000 space bucks, which is, if my calculations are right, an indeterminate amount USD 2017. That's a lot of money. We have industrial output, which is basically how many ships you can build. Building ships or space stations will take a certain amount of industrial output. Civilian and imperial is your population. Infrastructure is how well developed the planet is. Normally it maxes out at 100. Homeworld can go to 200. Resources, pretty self-explanatory, but it's the amount of stuff on your planet, minerals, and so on. The more you have, and the more infrastructure, and the more population, the higher your output will be. And income size determines maximum population. And as you can see here, this little symbol means that we have an asteroid belt. Over here, this button here is currently telling us what our population is limited to. We are limiting it to the center point, which is the safe population. If we go over, our population is going to start overusing the planet and it'll start losing resources. But it's safe to keep it here. Over harvest, it's going to destroy resources every turn, but it's going to, as you can see, increase the amount of industrial output and income we get. Planetary budget is how much money is going towards trade and how much is going towards construction. You can see it's not doing anything, and that's because we're not constructing anything. So all of our excess industrial output is going towards income. You probably just want to put it all towards construction because, again, anything not spent on construction goes towards trade anyway. The only reason you'd really want to fiddle with this is if you want to construct something, but you want to ensure that a minimum amount is spent on trade. So, ships. This is a 4X game. You need to explore and exploit and exterminate, and there's one more X that I can't remember. But you got to do it. You got to do all the X's. So let's explain these ships. Again, I will give you a little bit of helpful information here. So this is building ships, ship designs. You can see we have one command section, one armor section. Also, we could do assault shuttle, colonizer, etc. And our engine section is fission. Ships in this game are built with 3 sections. Command, which is sort of the bridge. Mission, which gives the overall purpose. And engine, which is going to determine how fast it is. So, we've currently got our basic armor, and we don't have a lot of options. We can either have gauze cannons or red lasers. You can see damage, range, accuracy, etc. We can also see, from clicking here, what the arcs are. We could also click here to show us all the arcs on the entire ship. This section has 2 medium mounts. We only have 1 medium weapon, and that's missiles, which everybody starts with. We could also put in small weapons, which would give us double the number of mounts. But, well, still better to use missiles than just 4 gauze cannons. Tactical speed, turning speed, these are used in combat. Speed, just alone, is how many range units, how many light years your ship moves in a turn. Range is how far your ship can go before it runs out of fuel. Armor is basically hit points. Construction cost is how many points of industrial capacity it'll use. And savings cost is how much money you pay up front. Mass is how much your ship weighs and will affect the physics of it being hit with ballistic weapons and the like. So, we have no ships. We have some money. And we're going to have more next turn. So let's build some ships. We want to explore. We got extended range, which is sort of meant for exploration. You can see it moves at speed 2, but it has 20 range. The tanker, it's meant for refueling ships. And, well, it only has a range of 4. What it doesn't tell you is that it's going to refuel itself. So I find that tankers make better explorers in the early game than extended ranges. Extended ranges do have a purpose, though, specifically for humans. There's also defense platforms, which we can build around our planets, our colonies, to help defend them. But for now, let's just build some tankers. Because the tankers also cost like twice as much as an extended range. Anyway, we have 50,000 bucks in the bank. So if we construct 2 of these, we're going to be in the red. But actually, because we know that we're going to... Thank you, advisor. Because we know that we are going to be earning money, it's okay for us to be in the red. Because, you know, our net gain will be bigger than that. So in fact, let's build a third. And I should probably turn that off. There we go. So that's done. Oh, and as the last bit of UI, you can just click on a planet, hold, left click that is, drag to another planet, and it'll show you how many range units, I believe they're supposed to be light years, you are distant. And, yeah. So, I think we've done just about everything for this turn. So let's end the turn, and we'll see what happens. Gives you a little countdown in case you accidentally clicked it. If I click there again, it would stop the timer. So you got your little ticker down here. If we click on one of the events here, we'll get a little pop-up thing in the top right, which is useful. Gives us a rundown of stuff happening throughout our empire. So what do we have here? We have our ships having all completed because each of them were about, oh, how much were they? Their construction cost was about 3,000, and we built 3 of them, which is about 9,000, and we had 18,000 capacity. So we have these, and we can move them. But we have 3 of them, and we want to get out to explore, right? So what we're going to do is, not that, right click, split ships, which splits the fleet into 3 separate pieces. If you did this on any size fleet, it would just split it into a whole bunch of small fleets of 1 ship each. To move ships, you click on the fleet, click move, click where you want to go. You can see here it'll tell you the range and the estimated time of arrival, the number of turns. To merge ships, when they're at a planet, just click and drag like so. I could also click a single ship, drag it out to manually differentiate them, split them I should say. And if you want to refuel things or repair them at planets, you would do them from the special button. Just make sure that you have the right fleet selected. Now we're going to put this here, and we're going to put this here. And these are the fleet lines that I mentioned earlier. So if we don't want them, we can do that. And then it'll only show fleet lines for whatever we have selected. But it's generally better to be able to see all of them. As we can see here, our research is 4 turns complete. Well, I've probably just given you a heck of a lot to mull over. So this is probably a nice place to end for now. Hopefully this has been of some help, and we will continue with the next video.